Hi, I'm Julia, a 40-year-old entertainment journalist who spent the past 2 decades immersed in the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. My job has taken me to countless award shows, premieres, and exclusive after-parties. I've interviewed some of the biggest stars and written stories that made headlines. On the surface, it's a dream career, exciting, fast-paced, and always filled with surprises. But as much as I loved my work, I couldn't ignore a growing discomfort. Hollywood had changed over the years, or maybe I had. There seemed to be this increasingly casual, almost celebratory irreverence toward God. Jokes about faith and dismissive remarks about spirituality had become staples at award shows, and I found myself shrugging them off, thinking, it's just entertainment. Yet deep down, I started to wonder if there were bigger consequences to this attitude. This story begins on a clear January night in 2024, just hours after the 82nd Golden Globe Awards. I was driving home from an interview in Beverly Hills, replaying the night's highlights in my mind. It was a typical Hollywood evening, glamorous, chaotic, and full of drama. Little did I know, my life was about to take a turn I could never have imagined. It was late and I was on my way home from a post-Golden Globes interview session in Beverly Hills. The night had been so exciting, the hustle and bustle of celebrities, the flashes of cameras and the conversations about the evening's unrelenting tone. My mind was still processing all of this as I drove through the turns of Mulholland Drive. It was a beautiful, clear night, and everything seemed so normal, so routine, until it happened. Suddenly, I felt a searing pain in my chest, like a clenching constriction around my heart. My vision blurred and panic set in. I tried to stop, but my body wasn't responding. The next thing I saw was my car go off the road and hit the guardrail. It all happened so fast, yet I remember every moment so well. Later, I learned that I had suffered a massive heart attack, what they call a widowmaker, a cardiac event that very few people survive. For 11 minutes, I was clinically dead. It was 11 minutes when my heart stopped beating and the medical team was working desperately to save me. But what happened in those 9 minutes wasn't just medical. It was much bigger than that, something that changed my life forever. When my heart stopped, I expected nothingness, a blank void. Instead, I found myself stepping out of my body, almost as if shedding a heavy, burdensome coat. I could see the scene unfolding below me. My car wrecked, paramedics working desperately to revive me, their voices urgent but distant. It was surreal, but I wasn't scared. I felt released. Then everything around me shifted. I became aware of a warm, radiant light in the distance, drawing me in. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but alive, overflowing with love, peace, and wisdom. The closer I moved, the more I felt like I was being pulled into the arms of someone who had been waiting for me. That's when I saw him, Jesus. There are no words to fully describe him. He wasn't just light or a figure. He was the embodiment of love, truth, and authority. When he looked at me, I felt completely seen, as if every thought, every action, and every moment of my life was laid bare. But instead of feeling judged, I felt loved in a way I had never imagined possible. "Julia," he said, his voice full of kindness, "you have been chosen to see what others cannot, so you may tell them what truly matters." Then he showed me my life. I saw myself as a child, praying with pure faith, eager to know God. I saw my teenage years where doubt began to creep in, and then my adult years where I had fully embraced the glamour and ambition of Hollywood. I thought I'd left faith behind, but I realized, standing before him, that it wasn't an abrupt decision. It had been a slow drift. Each small compromise, each laugh at a joke mocking faith, each article I wrote dismissing spirituality as old-fashioned had pushed me further away from God. Jesus didn't just show me my life, He helped me understand the ripple effects of my choices. My words, my actions, even the casual jokes I supported, had influenced others more than I ever realized. "You are not alone in this drift," he said. "Many in Hollywood have turned away from faith, thinking they've gained freedom when they've only traded it for chains." Then he revealed something that shook me to my core. He showed me the spiritual reality of Hollywood's influence, not just in the industry itself, but across the world. Every dismissive joke about God, every mocking comment, sent out ripples that affected millions. It wasn't just entertainment, it was shaping how people thought about faith and morality on a global scale. I saw actors on stage jokingly thanking themselves instead of God. The audience laughed, but in the spiritual realm, I saw darkness spreading, waves of pride and mockery, touching everyone in the room and rippling outward to the millions watching. "Hollywood doesn't just create culture," Jesus said. "It creates a template for how the world sees me." And yet, even as he revealed these truths, there was no condemnation in his voice, only a call to action. "There is still hope," he told me. "You can help turn hearts back to me." When Jesus showed me the spiritual realities surrounding Hollywood, it was like pulling back a curtain on a hidden world I had never known existed. I saw battles raging, intense, relentless struggles between light and darkness. It wasn't the cartoonish version of good versus evil you see in movies. It was raw, powerful, and deeply personal. Angels and demons were clashing, not over abstract ideas, but over people, individual hearts, choices, and lives. What struck me most was how Hollywood had become a battleground unlike any other. Jesus showed me how its influence reached far beyond the studios, red carpets, and awards shows. What the industry normalized, the mockery of faith, the glorification of self, the rejection of God's sovereignty, echoed around the globe, shaping how millions thought and lived. And while much of it seemed harmless, even entertaining, in the spiritual realm, it had real consequences. I was shown moments where Hollywood's laughter at God's expense sent ripples through the spiritual atmosphere. What we dismissed as just jokes or satire was, in reality, feeding a growing rejection of God's authority. Each mocking word, each dismissal of faith, weakened humanity's connection to the divine. It wasn't a punishment from God, but a natural result of pushing him away, a brokenness that created space for chaos. Then Jesus showed me the connection between humanity's choices and the brokenness of the natural world. He explained that natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, weren't direct punishments from God. They were consequences of living in a fallen world, a world that humanity itself had fractured through sin and rebellion. What you see as random disasters are often the groaning of a creation longing to be restored, he said. The world was never meant to be like this, but when humanity rejected my ways, it brought brokenness to everything. People, relationships, even nature. I saw how this rejection created an imbalance, not just spiritually, but physically. It wasn't that God was sending calamities in anger. Rather, humanity's choices were leading us further into the chaos of a broken world. And yet, even in the midst of all this, Jesus' love and hope never wavered. He looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow and compassion. "There is still time," he said. "Time to turn back, to choose life over destruction. But the choice begins with hearts willing to listen." As I stood there with Jesus, he showed me something I had never truly grasped before: the immense responsibility that Hollywood carries. I've always known Hollywood has power. It's the cultural epicenter, shaping trends, influencing mindsets, and even changing the way people see the world. But what Jesus revealed was on a whole different level. Hollywood isn't just about entertainment. It's a global force with a spiritual weight I had never considered. Jesus explained that Hollywood's reach goes far beyond movies and TV shows. It shapes ideas about faith, morality, and truth for billions of people around the world. For many, Hollywood is their teacher, their preacher, their guide. The messages that come out of this place ripple across the globe, affecting how people see themselves, others, and even God. I was shown how creators, the writers, directors, producers, and actors are like architects of culture. What they build can inspire hope, love, and faith, or it can lead people into despair, division, and darkness. And while many in the industry see themselves as simply telling stories or pushing boundaries, in the spiritual realm, these choices carry far more weight. Every story told, every theme explored, every joke at God's expense, none of it is neutral. Jesus showed me how this accountability plays out. It wasn't about condemnation, it was about understanding the influence they wield. He wasn't angry. He was sorrowful, like a parent watching their child misuse a gift meant for good. He said, Hollywood has the power to uplift, to show my love, to spark change. But too often, it chooses to mock, to twist, to glorify the things that what struck me the most was the potential Jesus revealed. He showed me what Hollywood could be, a beacon of hope, a place where stories of redemption, courage, and love could flourish. He made it clear that this wasn't about forcing faith down people's throats, lead to destruction. It was about authenticity, showing the beauty of truth, the depth of grace, and the power of real, selfless love. Hollywood has the power to spark a spiritual revival, not by preaching, but by creating stories that point to something greater than ourselves. I saw glimpses of what this revival could look like. Films and shows that touched hearts, healed wounds, and inspired people to seek out the God who loves them. I saw creators using their talents not to tear down, but to build up. I felt hope stirring, even in the face of all the brokenness. As I looked at Jesus, I realized the weight of this message wasn't just for Hollywood's creators. It was for me, too. I had been part of the problem, a cog in the machine, complicit in the narratives that mocked God. But now I saw the truth. Hollywood has a responsibility, and so do I. It's not too late for change, for redemption. It's time to use the gifts we've been given for something that truly matters. When Jesus showed me the signs of the end times, it was like my eyes were opened to a puzzle I didn't even know existed. I had heard about these things before: natural disasters, moral decay, wars. But it always felt distant, like something out of an old Sunday school lesson or a fire and brimstone sermon I didn't want to hear. But now, standing with him, it was no longer abstract. It was real, urgent, and deeply personal. He started with what I already knew: the chaos we see in the world today. Earthquakes, hurricanes, wildfires. They seem to be growing in intensity and frequency. I'd always brushed these off as just how nature works, but Jesus showed me the deeper truth. These events weren't direct punishments from God, but they were consequences of a broken world, a world groaning under the weight of humanity's rejection of Him. They were like warning signs, calling us to pay attention, to turn back before it's too late. Then He showed me the spiritual deception sweeping across the globe. I saw how truth is being twisted, how people are being led astray by ideas that promise freedom, but deliver emptiness. There's this thirst for something greater: spirituality without God, enlightenment without truth. It broke my heart to see how easily people are drawn to lies, desperate for meaning, but unwilling to look to the one who offers it freely. I realized how complicit I had been in this deception, even indirectly, by being part of an industry that often glorifies these false ideologies. Next, Jesus showed me the moral decay. How what was once considered good is now ridiculed, and what was once shameful is now celebrated. It wasn't just about individual choices. It was about a culture that's drifted so far from God that sin is no longer just tolerated, it's applauded. He wasn't showing me this to condemn humanity, but to reveal the urgency of repentance. His heart ached for people to turn back to Him, to see the beauty of living in alignment with His design. Technology came next, and this one surprised me. I saw how advancements meant to connect us were instead isolating us, how tools that could do so much good were being used to spread lies, fuel hatred, and distract us from what truly matters. But Jesus also showed me the potential for technology to be a force for good if used wisely and with discernment. He showed me Israel. I'll admit, I hadn't given much thought to its significance before. But Jesus tied current events to biblical prophecies in a way that left me speechless. Israel wasn't just a nation, it was a signpost, a reminder that God's promises stand firm and that His plan is unfolding even when the world feels out of control. As He spoke, I felt the weight of these warnings, not as threats, but as acts of love. These signs weren't meant to scare us, but to wake us up, to call us back to Him before it's too late. Jesus made it clear, the time for repentance is now. The world is crying out for redemption, and He's giving us every chance to turn to Him. The question is, will we listen? Despite the weight of everything I'd seen, Jesus didn't leave me in despair. The visions of brokenness, rebellion, and suffering weren't the end of the story. He took my hand and showed me something even greater, God's love, shining brighter than any darkness. It wasn't a fleeting feeling or an abstract concept. It was real, tangible, and unshakable. Jesus began by reminding me that even in the middle of the world's chaos, God's sovereignty remains. Nothing takes Him by surprise. Every heartbreak, every tragedy, every moment of confusion, He's not distant from any of it. He feels our pain more deeply than we can imagine. And He's always working to bring good out of the mess, even when we can't see it. He showed me countless stories of redemption, moments where people who had hit rock bottom turned to Him and found hope. It was like watching flowers bloom in the middle of a wasteland. He made it clear that suffering isn't God's desire for us. It's the result of living in a fallen world, one where we've collectively chosen to reject Him. But even in that rejection, His love doesn't falter. Jesus showed me how God continually reaches out, offering grace and restoration. He never forces us. He simply invites. Every natural disaster, every personal trial, they're not punishments but reminders of our need for Him. He's always ready to comfort, heal, and guide us if we let Him. Then, Jesus talked about choice. He emphasized how humanity is at a crossroads. On one side is grace, a free gift, given to us through His sacrifice on the cross. It's not something we can earn or deserve, but it's always available. On the other side is judgment, not because God is cruel, but because He's just. If we reject His grace, we choose to face the consequences of our actions on our own. It's a choice He gives every person, and it's one we all have to make. But what struck me the most was the hope Jesus showed me for the future. He revealed glimpses of people coming together, hearts turning back to God, and lives being transformed. I saw artists creating beauty that pointed to Him, communities caring for each other, and individuals stepping into their God-given purposes. Even in Hollywood, a place I'd come to see as so spiritually lost, there was potential for revival. Jesus reminded me that no one is too far gone, no culture too corrupt, for His love to reach. He ended with a promise: God's love will always prevail. Even when it feels like evil is winning, His goodness is stronger. Even when we face suffering, He's with us, walking through it, offering hope and healing. It's up to us to respond, to say yes to His grace, and to live in a way that reflects His love. Standing there, I knew one thing for certain. No matter how dark the world gets, God's light will never be extinguished. When I woke up in that hospital bed, it wasn't just my body that felt new. It was my entire being. Everything I had seen, everything I had experienced, had given me a clarity I'd never had before. Jesus didn't just bring me back to life physically. He gave me a purpose, one I couldn't ignore. As I lay there, piecing together what had happened, it became clear that my survival wasn't random. It wasn't luck or coincidence. Jesus saved me for a reason, to share what I had seen and learned. I was charged with a mission, to warn others of the dangers of ignoring God and to inspire them to turn to Him. I'll admit, at first, it felt overwhelming. Who was I, a woman who had drifted so far from faith, to suddenly speak for God? But the answer came quickly. I wasn't being asked to be perfect or have all the answers. I was being asked to tell the truth, to share my story, and let God do the rest. Reflecting on my life, I saw how easy it was to get caught up in the world's distractions. I had spent years chasing career milestones, red carpets, and the approval of people who didn't even know my name. But what had it all amounted to? None of it had filled the emptiness inside me. In contrast, the love and purpose Jesus showed me in those brief moments were more fulfilling than anything I had ever experienced. I realized my journey wasn't just about my salvation. It was about using my testimony to help others find theirs. It's not easy to confront the realities I saw, to admit that we've gone astray, that our world mocks the very God who created it, is uncomfortable. But pretending it's not happening doesn't make it any less real. My prayer is that my experience will be a wake-up call, a reminder that life is more than fame, success, or fleeting pleasures. It's about a relationship with the one who made us, loves us, and offers us a future beyond anything we can imagine. This isn't just my story, it's an invitation to look beyond the surface of life and ask the deeper questions, to seek truth, no matter how inconvenient it might be, to acknowledge that we need something, someone greater than ourselves. Jesus gave me a second chance, and I don't intend to waste it. If sharing my story can help even one person take a step toward God, then it's worth every awkward conversation, every skeptical look, and every uncomfortable moment. My hope is that you won't wait for a crisis or a near-death experience to ask the questions I ignored for so long. The truth is already there, waiting for you. All you have to do is open your heart,